Well, good evening and welcome to another exciting episode of Love Not Fear. I'm Jack Cox, author of Love Not Fear, and I'm joined by my usual scrumptious good co-host who's written two wonderful books.
Orgasmic Health and Your Guide to Feeling Fabulous Fast.
So, merry Beltane, everybody.
Yay!
Let's talk a little bit about Beltane.
Indeed.
For many thousands of years, Beltane celebrations have marked the end of spring and the beginning of summer. Earth energies are at their strongest and most active. All of life is bursting with potent fertility at this point in the wheel of the year. The potential, yeah. On May Eve, the sexuality of life and of the earth is at its peak. Abundant fertility on all levels is the central theme. The maiden goddess has reached her fullness. She is the manifestation of growth and renewal.
Yay!
Flora, that's an old name for the goddess of spring, becomes the May Queen, the May Bride.
Yeah.
And the young Oak King.
Indeed.
As Jack in the Green, or the Green Man, falls in love with her.
How could he resist?
And wins her hand. Lucky bugger.
Indeed.
The
Outside
union,
sex.
The union is consummated and the May Queen becomes pregnant.
Indeedy.
Together, the May Queen and the May King are symbols of the sacred marriage, the union of earth and sky. A brilliant moment in the wheel of the year to bring ideas, hopes, and dreams into action. What have you dreamt of bringing into action at this time?
Ooh.
Just like the unfurling of the leaves and opening of the flowers, it's your time to unfurl and have some fun.
That sounds like a great idea to me, Jack Cox.
So a very merry Beltane to everyone.
Yay!
This is the time of year when traditionally cattle would be driven into the summer pastures.
Yeah.
Beltane is a fire festival when bonfires are lit in honor of the sun and recognize its role in bringing new warmth and new life to the land.
Absolutely. You only have to look in our gardens and outdoor areas in nature to see that everything, you know, the blossoms here, all the different spring flowers are really radiant now, aren't they? It's just beautiful.
Nature is now in full bloom.
Mm-hmm.
This is a Celtic,
darling.
Sorry? This is
Sorry,
a
that was me glugging ginger tea saying absolutely.
Glugging ginger tea, how wonderful. This is a Celtic festival, and it must be said that our Celtic history has been pretty much suppressed, or at least hasn't had the attention it should have had.
Absolutely.
By the mainstream over the years. And nor has our Norse history. Although there's been a huge revival of interest in these periods in recent decades. The Norse people were here for about 250 years. The Danes, and to a lesser extent the Norwegians, actually held all of Britain at one point, with the exception of the north of Scotland and a small part of the Somerset levels.
Yeah. And
they brought their religion with them, as they would. And their religion was based largely around the sun, the solstices and the equinoxes.
Yeah.
Whereas the Celtic religion, the Celts were here before the Danes invaded, as you probably realise. The Celtic religion focused more on the agricultural calendar, the 4 fire festivals of Imbolc, Beltane, Lunasa, and Samhain.
Yeah.
And the Saxon religion was very similar to that of the Norse, until they adopted Christianity, of course. We modern pagans tend to celebrate all 8 festivals in our Wheel of the Year. Any excuse for a piss-up.
We are all sons and daughters of Robin Hood, as Damh the Bard says.
Absolutely. I'm going to mention him later.
Are you?
Oh, yes.
I'm very synchronistic. I love Damh the Bard.
I used to.
Hey?
I used to.
Oh, I've seen him in concert a few times. He's so amazing.
So, just as the spring equinox, we celebrated the spring equinox 6 weeks ago, and so we're now celebrating Beltane.
Yay!
One for the Norse and the Saxons, and one for the Celts.
Yeah.
Some people are unsure as to whether to celebrate Beltane on the 30th of April or the 1st of May. But all Celtic festivals traditionally start on the evening at sundown and go on for 3 days.
Yeah.
So in the old days, the fun would have started on the evening of the 30th of April.
Yeah, there's nothing like making a good thing last longer. There's a big mural, isn't there, in Glastonbury saying, too much of a good thing is absolutely wonderful. And I concur with that.
Absolutely. I'll have a pint of that and another one. Some people like to hold a sacred ritual on the evening of the 30th and then have the public maypole and all of the other fun activities on the May Day. The May Queen, decked in flowers, takes the first maypole ribbon. Then the men take the white ribbons and the women take the red ribbons, and one dances clockwise while the other dances anti-clockwise to weave the spiral of ribbons around the maypole, symbolizing the Hieroskamus, or sacred marriage of the gods that brings fertility to the land. Traditionally, rituals would be performed to protect cattle, people, and crops, and to encourage growth while the fires are kindled. The smoke and the ashes are said to have protective properties. The cattle are driven between the bonfires for a blessing and to keep them safe.
Yeah.
Household hearth fires would be lit from the bonfires.
Yeah.
These gatherings would be accompanied by much feasting and merriment, which is the bit we like.
Bring it on.
And some of the food and drink would be offered as a libation to the spirits of the land.
Yes, indeedy.
Windows and livestock are often decorated with mayflowers, otherwise known as hawthorn, and ribbons of bright shells too. Holy wells were often visited.
Yeah. Oh, the well dressing in Derbyshire is phenomenal, isn't it? Really is beautiful.
Just say a little bit about that before I carry on with mine.
Just that if you haven't ever been to a well dressing in Derbyshire, it's beautiful. They use all of the flowers and plants from the natural environment and make the most beautiful, I don't know what you call them really, murals, but they're all made out of natural items, made out of plants and flowers basically. And it was in honor of the water goddess as well as the fire god.
Sounds wonderful. I'll have to see if I can get down to one.
Indeedy.
And of course, Annie and I will both know, because it's our favourite place on this earth, that there's been a huge festival in Glastonbury today.
Yay! I would have been very surprised had there not been a huge festival in Glastonbury on Beltane, really. That would have been a huge surprise, wouldn't it?
And the dragons yesterday, so
yeah,
I'm putting loads of videos up on my Facebook channel if anybody
I've seen, darling. I'm very envious.
At Beltane in the morning, young maidens and older ones too use the early morning dew to enhance their beauty and prolong their youthfulness. Now let's talk a little bit about the Irish traditions. Known in Ireland as Beltane or Beltane, and the name Setamane is also used sometimes, which means the start of summer.
Yeah.
There's a big annual event, which unfortunately has become rather commercialized.
Yeah.
And they sell tickets, so you can't get in with their ticket and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah.
The Beltane Fire Festival at Ullsnacht Hill.
Yeah.
The lighting of the Beltane fire on the Hill of Unacht is one of Ireland's oldest traditions.
Yeah, and rightly so.
In ancient times, a great assembly would gather on the hill to witness the fire being lit by the High King of Ireland.
Yeah.
The Beltane fire is traditionally seen as marking the arrival of summer. In recent years, this tradition has been revived to become one of the key events in the Irish cultural calendar.
Yeah.
And a great family and community event.
Yeah.
The event includes all kinds of music, art, crafts, and traditional workshops, stalls, talks, demonstrations, games for children, yoga, healing and mindfulness sessions, among many other things. And I must just say, if you want to go next year, you need to book your tickets well in advance because they sell out very, very quickly.
Mm.
The ancient Irish, to the ancient Irish, the year is divided into a light half and a dark half. The day was seen as beginning at sundown. And it's the same pretty much in Wales.
Yeah.
Same during the whole of Britain and
Yeah.
most of Gaul as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, while we're celebrating Beltane or Beltane in Northern Hemisphere, the people in the summer hemisphere are celebrating Samhain.
Yeah.
I just want to have a little dig here to the mainstream people out there. I don't know why it is that when other people, the mainstream people, write about this day and indeed all the pagan traditions, that they always put them in the past tense.
Yeah.
These are very, very much living traditions.
Absolutely.
And it's important to me and to Annie and to many other people like us.
Yeah.
That we keep them alive.
They're living traditions. They're part of our hereditary bloodline that we've always celebrated this. And yeah, you're right. Or they dismiss us as pseudo pagans. What the fuck is a pseudo pagan? When what would this look like? What would it behave like? So yeah, you're right, Jack. The mainstream media, which we know is all false stuff, and
Right.
I don't want us to know how magnificent we are. So yeah, good luck with that, because it's not working. This is a festival that is alive and supported by many of us beautiful souls.
Yeah. The name Beltane, of course, Beltane is derived from the sun god Bel, Beli, Belenos.
Yeah, I've got
Celtic
that.
and Gaelic, who is indeed the Celtic Gaelic version of Apollo.
Yeah.
At this time of year, the veil between the human and spiritual worlds is temporarily lifted, as it is at Samhain.
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned Unacht. I'm a little bit confused about this, to be honest. And so if anybody knows better than me, and I'm sure somebody will, then please do write in and tell us. Or if you know better, Annie, please, or Andrew, please say so now. there seems to be some confusion as to whether the high kings would have lit the fire on the hill of Unak or on the hill of Tara.
Yeah.
Just a few miles away.
Yeah.
So I say, if anybody knows for certain, but I've heard both versions of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too, darling.
So if anyone knows, please do share. As the centuries progressed, the Great Fire became a catalyst festival when tribal leaders, chiefs, kings and queens would gather together.
Yeah.
But of course, these were beacon fires. So huge fires would be lit on the summits of all the high hills, including the two we've just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Throughout the land.
Yeah.
The only questions are which was lit first and which was attended by the High King.
Yeah.
Because the High King will light his first, and then all the others will
Yeah, absolutely.
light theirs. So here's an interesting thing about Beltane that I rather like. The greenwood marriages.
Indeed.
Mm.
Hand fasting.
Well, the greenwood marriages took place at Beltane. They probably still do take place, although it's probably kept quiet these days.
Yeah.
The union between the May Queen and the Oak King would be echoed by the young people of the community, who would go off into the woods and fields and do what young people do best.
And everybody else come to that.
Absolutely. It's not
The
just
two
the young
driving
people.
forces for all of us beautiful souls is self-preservation and sex, basically. They're the two driving forces. So yeah, long may that continue.
Now, it's a time of sexuality, sensuality, passion, vitality, and joy.
Yay!
Or at least it was before the Christians came along and told us it was rude.
Yeah, and it was naughty. And
Not
you
that
only
we
do
took
it when
any
you want babies. I know, yeah.
Not that we ever took any notice.
Completely right, was it? Thank goodness for Eastern traditions.
No, children born of these couplings 9 months later are considered sacred children.
Yeah.
Children of the gods. Are the responsibility of everyone in the community.
Indeed.
They're treated as special children.
Yeah.
They're not treated as bastards or illegitimate.
Yeah.
They're treated as very, very special children.
And that's exactly how it should be.
Because they were conceived in ritual or in the celebrations following the ritual,
yeah,
they were considered to be holy children.
Yeah.
They were given names such as Godfrey or Godkin and lots of other similar names.
Yeah, yeah.
To indicate that they were children of God, of the gods. Now, I don't want to, I'm just going to say this briefly. I don't want to insult anybody's religious beliefs. That's the last thing I ever want to do. But there's something that's intriguing me, which may or may not be true. I'm not putting this forward as truth. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah.
And anyway, we're all open-minded, or we wouldn't be tuned in. But something to ponder. What was the origin of the virgin birth stories?
Egypt.
Because the mothers of the children were still considered to be virgins.
Yep.
It's very interesting. I'm wondering whether Jesus might have been conceived in ritual.
Yeah. It's occurred to me lots of times, Jack. That's absolutely spot on with what I think as well. Yeah, yeah.
Which is why he was called a child of God or the Son of God.
Yeah, yeah.
These traditions go back at least to early Celtic times. So what, 3,000 or 4,000 years?
Yeah.
And we know that similar things were going on in the Mediterranean countries too.
Oh, absolutely.
So it makes a lot of sense to me.
Indeedy.
like I say, I certainly don't want to trample on anybody's religious beliefs with my heavy boots. So if that doesn't resonate with you, then please just leave it, okay?
Yeah, just skip over it.
Beltane is an auspicious time for hand fasting ceremonies.
Yay!
The couple tie their hands with a red cord in a figure of 8 and pledge to stay together for a year and a day. This is one of the things that I love about the pagan traditions, the pagan marriage. There are basically 2 different forms you can choose. You can agree to sign up. You can agree to be hand fast for a year and a day, or for as long as love
for
lasts.
longer. Yeah.
But either way, I mean, there's still the same hurt when a couple breaks up.
Yeah.
But it's not the big social stigma that we have in
the
world.
And although it's said not to be legally binding, you'd have to have, you know, another kind of ceremony for it to be legally binding. There are couples that I know that have been hand fasted, and they honour their vows as much as you would if you were in a marriage. So, you know, it's still as sacred, it's still as special, it's still as, I don't know, it's still, you know, a way of couples staying together for, as you say, either a year and a day or for longer periods of time.
Yeah. Now, in this country, as far as I know, it may have changed, but as far as I know, it's still the case. That you can have a marriage ceremony, and you can sign the book, and they're 2 different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as far as I know, it's only in a Church of England ceremony that you can actually sign the book.
Yeah.
I think it's only a Church of England celebrant that can legally marry you. Even a Roman Catholic one can't. This is what I heard.
Well, I was married 40 years ago, so I don't know. At the time, we did sign a book, but yeah.
But some celebrants are able to do it now, I believe.
Yeah.
And I had a very good friend in Scotland who was doing it, doing a pagan hand fasting. And well, we know people here in Stafford doing it, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure what the legalities of it are now. Now, I've got a story I just want to show. I mean, that's all the history and stuff I want to deal with today.
Okay.
But I just want to very briefly share a very beautiful story with you.
Indeed.
And this is where Damh the Bard, Dave the Bard, comes in, because he sings it.
Love him.
And it's called Blodeuwedd. And I will put the link to it below. Now, as I said earlier, I'm afraid I fell out with him a few years ago because he appeared at a segregated gig, a medical apartheid gig in Rugeley. And I really, really wanted to go, and they wouldn't let me in.
Oh,
so
how very bloody mean.
Yeah. So I rather thought that the man who wrote Sons and Daughters of Robin Hood, they should have stood up.
Yeah.
And made a stand.
Yeah.
If you think that we would do nothing, you misunderstood.
Because we are the sons and daughters of Robin Hood.
Well, he bent the knee, didn't he?
Oh, bless him.
So
bless him.
I rather went off him at that point, but I still think his music is absolutely
absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? Really is. And as we say, you know, particularly relevant for the last 3 years is we are the sons and daughters of Robin Hood, and we are doing something about the evil dark cabal. So yeah, very relevant for now, isn't it?
Yeah. Nevertheless, this beautiful story, and he puts it into song so beautifully.
Yeah.
It tells of Blodeuwedd, who's sometimes called Blodeuwedd,
Yeah.
the flower bride. Now, these stories aren't meant to be taken literally, they're just stories.
Yeah.
Created for the son of the goddess Arianrod by his uncle. And some versions say there was more than one uncle. Arianrod had declared her son would never marry a mortal woman. So in the mythology, in the story, it's just a story. It's not supposed to be taken literally. His uncle made a May Queen out of flowers and called her Blodeuwedd. They took the flowers of the oak and the flowers of the broom and the flowers of the meadowsweet. And from those they called forth the fairest and best endowed maiden that mortals ever saw.
Wonderful.
And she was duly presented in marriage to Arianrod's son. Now, shortly after that, he leaves her alone in the castle and goes to visit his uncle, who has promised him some land. She's not happy in the marriage. I mean, don't forget, she was created specifically for this marriage. She was never asked.
Yeah.
I'm sure the feminists would have something to say about all that.
And arranged marriages and all that jazz.
Yeah. In the meantime, a hunting party turns up at the castle, and Blodeuwedd invites the leader in. His name is Gwanu. They immediately fall in love, and she knew great joy of heart.
Yeah.
And their talk that night was of affection and love that they had conceived for one another. Losing no time, they plot to kill her husband. So on his return from his trip, Blodeuwedd tells her husband that she fears for his ultimate demise. And he tries to reassure her that it wouldn't be an easy thing to do to kill him. He must be killed in a very, very specific manner, with a spear that's been a year and a day in the making. And not only that, but the manner of his killing must be very, very specific. They must make a bath for him, or some people say a cauldron, on the riverbank. They must make a vaulted dome, or vaulted frame over the tub, and set a billy goat beside the tub.
Okay.
Yeah, a billy goat, yeah.
Horny goats. Yeah.
And he must place, it's all symbolism. And he must place
Absolutely.
He must place 1 foot on the cauldron and 1 foot on the goat.
Right.
Okay. Without falling over. Because it's symbolic. And then they must kill him with the spear that's been forged for a year and a day.
Right.
So Blodeuwedd reassures him and says that, oh yeah, that can be easily avoided, you know. I'm not worried anymore, that's easily avoided. So armed with this information, her lover gets to work on the spear.
Good man.
And a year and a day later, once they've have a plan in place, Blodeuwedd again shows concern for her husband's safety, asking her unsuspecting husband to demonstrate how indeed he might meet his death. Obviously, he's not too bright, this guy, you know.
What could possibly go wrong with that?
He's obviously not too bright.
He's a little bit woo-woo, isn't he?
So he obliges.
How wonderful cooperative.
Yeah, nice guy. He stands with 1 foot on the tub and the other on the goat. And straight away, Grenouille leaps out of the bushes and stabs him with a spear. Now, don't forget, these are all magical people, so he doesn't actually die.
Yeah.
The king's essence flies up into the air, into the sky, in the form of an eagle, giving a terrible scream. But that's not the end of the story, as you might have guessed. The king's aggrieved uncle sets out to find him. Eventually, they find a maggot-infested old eagle sitting in an oak tree. And the uncle magically changes him back into the form of a man. But he's in a pitiful state, and it takes him a year and a day to recover. They do love their year and a days, don't they, the Celts?
Year and a day, baby. It's very, very clever, isn't it?
Everything's a year and a day. So he then rides back to the castle, where his wife and her lover are cohabiting. So in the upheaval, all her handmaidens drown in the lake as they try to escape. But Blodeuwedd herself survives, only to be turned into an owl, cursed to never see light, and that there may be enmity between her and the other birds, and that they will mob and molest her whenever they find her. So it could be said that the flower maiden, made as the perfect wife to serve her husband, falls in love and thereby empowers herself.
Yeah.
This enables her to take the sort of ruthless action that those who are deprived of choice must take.
Yeah.
Now think about it. Think about it in the context of what's been happening over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Those who are deprived of action, deprived of choice, may well resort to ruthless action.
Oh, I do hope so.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I do hope so.
Not that we're inciting violence on this channel, but...
No, but, you know, I'm enjoying being a warrior goddess.
It was, I can't remember who it was now. It was one of the Kennedys, wasn't it? Who said those that make peaceful rebellion impossible, make violent rebellion inevitable.
Yeah. It's spot on, isn't it?
Yeah. So the owl.
When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The owl, an ancient symbol of wisdom and cronehood, female maturity. So she achieved independence and self-determination in the end.
Yay!
And as an owl, remains connected to the cycle of nature forevermore. What do you think of that, Annie?
I think it's absolutely a wonderful, wonderful story.
What do you think?
And, you know, there's all that mystical symbology in it as well. It's just beautiful. Just beautiful.
It's what stuck out to me is the 12 month and a day, because I looked up steel I span all around my hat. Yeah, I will wear the green willow and all around my hat for a 12 month and a day. And if anyone should ask me the reason why I'm wearing it, it's all for my true love, who's far, far away.
Far, far away.
And I've never really heard a year and a day as many times as I have tonight. And I never thought it was anything stuck within the tradition of anybody, but now it makes sense. Yeah,
it's a very, very important part of Celtic tradition.
Why and a day?
Well,
perhaps they don't believe in the heliocentric model, and they didn't believe in 365 being a good I can't even talk now. Numerological number.
Yeah, it probably has that significance, but it may have some other significance as well. It
was very sacred to the Druids.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm I'm not sure of the reason behind it all.
But the story, I mean, if it doesn't seem to make sense. If did you say Blodeuwedd or Blodeuwedd was made?
Either.
All right. Was made for this arranged marriage.
Yeah.
Why was she not made so that she would actually be acquiescent of the marriage? It just doesn't make sense.
It's not meant to make
Obviously,
sense.
the magicalness.
I know it's not true.
It's not meant to be logical. The whole point of it is it's not logical.
Yeah, roses are red, violets are blue. Some poems rhyme, this one doesn't.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
I mean, even
But I
now,
love the story, Jack. I do love the story.
I mean, even now, if you want to be initiated into the craft, you need to study for a year and a day before your initiation.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Thank you very much for making me aware of that. You have made me aware of many other things, Jack, in this program, and all those videos need to be rewatched just so that we can catch up. I thought, oh, it's Beltane, and I seem to remember watching one of these videos from last year that you made. I don't know if I was actually there or not. But then I thought, well, are you just going to repeat? But you didn't repeat tonight. It's been new stuff. Thank you very much.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So what
right,
have you got?
is it me?
Yeah, you're up.
It's my turn. Got
You're
my
up.
castles going. I'm all ready. So I won't repeat what you said already.
I'm going to say anything about
in
tinsels.
ancient communities, all hearth fires would have been extinguished and a new need fire lit, which would have been used to relight people's hearths in their own homes. In this way, the community was connected to each other by the sacred fire, which was eternal to all. The festival would also have been a time of courtship rituals and a celebration of our own fertility. The important point to note when thinking about our own current festivals is the joy and the revelry that is fostered in the ritual. It is about casting off the darkness, celebrating the light, a time for celebrating fertility, both in the context of our biological functions as well as our own creative energies. The fertility of our creative community as well. The modern Beltane fire festivals were inspired by the ancient Gallic festival of Beltane, which began on the evening before the 1st of May and marked the beginning of summer. I'm not going to read all the stuff that you've already done on the Irish, but I am going to say that of the pre-Christian Celtic peoples, the Irish divided the year into two main seasons. Winter and the beginning of the year fell on November the 1st, the Irish Samhain, and mid-year and summer on May the 1st, Irish Beltane, spelt with an I in it. These two junctures were thought to be critical periods when the bounds between the human and supernatural worlds were temporarily erased. On May Eve, witches and fairies roamed freely, and measures had to be taken against their enchantments. Beltane was celebrated across the Gaelic, Celtic regions of the British Isles, including Scotland, Ireland, Wales, the Isle of Man, Devon and Cornwall. The Celts occupied much of the present-day Europe until driven back by the Roman Empire. The Romans successfully invaded the UK in 43 CE and managed to occupy most of England, but Ireland, Scotland and Wales proved too rugged a landscape and were too ferociously defended by us Celts. Go us! Those lands remained under the control of the Gaelic Celts, and Celtic languages are still practiced in those countries today. Beltane was an ancient Gaelic event with roots that predate the Roman conquest of the British Isles. While the Gaelic tribes of the British Isles were Celtic, we can't simply call Beltane a Celtic festival, as the traditions of the Gaelic Celts of the British Isles aren't recorded anywhere else in Celtic Europe, which encompassed most of Central Europe before its Roman annexation. Instead, it's more accurate to just call it a Gaelic festival. Beltane is definitely 1,000 years old, at least, probably older. The first recorded mention of Beltane was in the 10th century CE text, Cormac's glossary, known as the Gaelic as Sanus Cormac. The Irish bishop King Cormac was from Munster in the south of Ireland. He wrote his text explaining key Gaelic terms for the Latin-speaking Romans. He recorded that Beltane takes place on May the 1st to celebrate the beginning of summer. He also...
Can I just slip something in here, Annie?
Yeah.
You mentioned that the first written records are only about 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
The Celts never wrote down this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it would be by word of
they-
mouth, wouldn't it?
They weren't illiterate. They had their own language. They had their own
Yeah.
written language. They had their own alphabet. They had Ogham, which we've spoken about before.
Yeah.
But they didn't think it was right to put down about sacred things.
Yeah.
So the first people that wrote about the traditions were the Christian monks.
Yeah.
And they probably wrote a rather biased version of it all anyway.
Really? So unusual.
Really?
More fake news.
I don't think they could be relied upon for being objective or impartial.
No, certainly not.
But the
So,
traditions are certainly a lot older than the written records of them.
yeah, without a doubt, darling, without a doubt. So what was being said was that Ronald Hutton found evidence of the rituals in Munster in the 1820s and Leinster in the 1830s, both in Southern Ireland. The Scottish Hebrides had similar festivals around then as well. He also found evidence of Beltane rituals in the Isle of Man from 1837, which is not surprising as the island still retains much of its ancient Celtic identity to this day, including its Celtic language of Manx. Since the 1980s, Pagans and Wiccans have revived the pre-Christian festival. They often celebrate by carrying out small rituals that provide a connection with the beautiful earth seasons. Some recommend activities include building a special Beltane altar, covering it in seasonal flowers, having a bonfire, crafting a crown of flowers to wear. That's what I've usually done. Holding a Beltane feast for your friends and loved ones, or even making your own maypole. Haven't done that yet. Scotland's capital city has hosted the Beltane Fire Festival since 1988. While the revival celebration is different in content, there's no livestock in sight. In essence, the intention is the same. People come together on top of the hill to welcome in summer by lighting a huge bonfire. Before the bonfires are lit on Carlton Hill, the thousands of attendees witness a world-class fire show and procession with the pagan characters such as the Green Man and May Queen parading around the park, accompanied by drummers and body-painted, flame-wielding dancers. Yay!
Brilliant.
So as we've already said, people in the Southern Hemisphere celebrate Beltane on November the 5th. For many people, Beltane has become associated with the idea of fertility, both physical and in terms of creativity. Wiccans in particular may celebrate the wedding of the Lord and Lady at this time. There is often a celebration of sexuality, creativity, and growth. Many groups celebrate by lighting a fire or two fires, between which participants pass in hope of receiving protection and blessing from the sun. Beltane is also, as Jack's already said, a time of celebrating hand fastings, a commitment ceremony, binding for a year and a day. Beltane has become a popular festival, and in recent decades, many festivals and events have started to spring up again around the country and are proving very popular with the public. The best known is probably the Beltane Fire Festival, held on Calton Hill in Edinburgh every year since 1988. This is a dramatic and spectacular performance in which the May Queen makes a procession with her retinue around the site, followed by the Green Man, whose death and rebirth is the signal for the lighting of the Beltane bonfire. Another long-standing festival is at Thornburg-Henge, an ancient earthwork in North Yorkshire. The event takes place over the Maybank holiday weekend and includes workshops, musicians, a mystery play style reenactment of the Celtic myth enacted in the main ceremony at noon on the Sunday. So the gods and goddesses of Beltane, yippee! Artemis, the Greek god, the moon goddess Artemis, was associated with the hunt and was seen as a goddess of forests and hillsides. This pastoral connection made her a part of spring celebrations in later periods. Although she hunts animals, she is also a protector of the forest and its young creatures. Artemis was known as a goddess who valued her chastity and was fiercely protective of her status as a divine virgin. There's a lot of divine virgins about then. It's amazing how we managed to keep going and creating our species, really, isn't it? But hey. And then there was Bes, who is an Egyptian goddess worshipped in later centuries. Bes was a household protectress goddess and watched over mothers and young children. She and her husband, he and his wife, Besit, were paired up in rituals to cure problems with infertility. According to ancient Egypt researchers, he was the god of war, and she was a patron of childbirth and the home, and was associated with sexuality, humor, music, and dancing. The cult of Bes reached its peak during the Ptolemaic period, when he was often petitioned for help with fertility and sexual needs. Woo-woo. He soon became popular with the Phoenicians and Romans as well. In artwork, he's typically portrayed with an unusually large phallus.
There you go.
Well, what else would kind of show that you were the god of fertility?
Absolutely.
And then Bacchus, who is Roman, considered the equivalent of the Greek god Dionysus. Bacchus was the party god. Grapes, wine, and general debauchery were his domain. In March each year, Roman women would attend secret ceremonies on the Aventine Hill called the Bacchanalia, and he's associated with sexual free-for-alls and fertility. Fantastic. Bacchus has a divine mission, and that is his role of liberator. During his drunken frenzies, Bacchus loosens the tongues of those who partake of wine and other beverages, and allows people the freedom to say and do what they wish.
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
It does, doesn't it? And then Cernunnos, a Celtic horned god found in Celtic mythology, he's connected with male animals, particularly the stag in rut. Fantastic. And this has led him to be associated with fertility and vegetation. Depictions of Cernunnos are found in many parts of the British Isles and Western Europe. He is often portrayed with a beard and wild shaggy hair. He is, after all, the lord of the forest. Cernunnos has often been misinterpreted by fundamentalists as a symbol of Satan. He's not.
No,
It's just the opposite.
just the opposite. Yeah.
He's about nature being fecund and alive and beautiful, and there's nothing satanic about that, is there?
I've mentioned before on this show that the Christians only put horns on their devil when they found out that our God had horns.
Yeah. There's been a lot of, what should we say, corruption or overlays of Christianity on top of Celtic festivals, basically, and Celtic mythology.
Yeah.
So then we've got Flora, who is Roman. This goddess of spring and flowers had her own festival, Floralia, which was celebrated every year between April the 28th to May the 3rd, which fits our dates beautifully.
It does, yeah.
Romans dressed in bright robes and floral wreaths and attended theatre performances and outdoor shows. Offerings of milk and honey were made to the goddess. Ancient history expert N.S. Gill says the Floralia festival began in Rome in approximately 240 or 238 BC, when the temple to Flora was dedicated to please the goddess Flora into protecting all the blossoms. I like that.
That's beautiful, yeah. Mm.
And then Hera is a Greek goddess. This goddess of marriage was the equivalent of the Roman Juno and took it upon herself to bestow good tidings to new brides. In her earliest form, she appears to have been a nature goddess who presides over wildlife and nurses the young animals which she holds in her arms. Greek women who wished to conceive, particularly those who wanted a son, might make offerings to Hera in the form of votives, small statues, paintings, apples, and other fruits representing fertility. In some cities, Hera was honoured with an event called the Horaia, which was an all-female athletic competition beginning, it's thought, as early as the 6th century BCE. Then there's more.
And there's more.
Kokopelli is part of the Hopi tribe. Let's get rid of this again. This flute-playing, dancing spring god carries unborn children upon his own back and then passes them out to fertile women. In the Hopi culture, he is part of rites that relate to marriage and childbearing, as well as the reproductive abilities of animals. Often portrayed with rams and stags. Symbolic of his fertility, Kokopelli occasionally is seen with his consort, Kokopelmana. In one legend, Kokopelli was travelling through the land, turning winter into spring with the beautiful notes from his flute and calling the rain to come so that there would be a successful harvest later that year.
That's a beautiful story.
The hunch on his back represents the big bag of seeds and the songs that he carries. As he played his flute, he melted the snow and brought the warmth of spring back to the land. And then Mabab Mawana Waresa, the Zulu.
It's easy for you to say.
I'll say it again because I can. Mababa Mawana Waresa.
Well done, you've been
My
practicing.
Zulu's very good, clearly, tonight.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's good.
She is a Zulu goddess who is associated with both the harvest season and spring rains. According to legend, she's the one who taught women how to brew beer from grains.
That's
Beer
very
making,
important to know.
it is very important that your girl knows how to make beer. Beer making is traditionally women's work in South Africa. Thanks to her connection to the grain harvest, Mabawa Mwana Waresa is a goddess of fertility and is also associated with the rainy season that falls in late May, as well as rainbows. And then Pan, who is Greek, this agricultural god watched over shepherds and their flocks. He was a rustic sort of a god, spending lots of time.
Let's not have past tense here, please.
Yes. Okay, so spending lots of time roaming the woods and pastures, hunting and playing music on his flute. Pan is typically portrayed as having the hindquarters and horns of a goat, similar to a fawn. Because of his connection to fields and the forest, he is often honoured as a spring fertility god and the primordial god of love and sex. Nice.
Yeah, have a pint of that.
Priapus is a Greek god. This fairly minor rural god has one giant claim to fame. He's permanently erect, an enormous phallus. What can I say?
What can you say?
He was the son of Aphrodite by Dionysus or possibly Zeus, depending on the source. Priapus was mostly worshipped in homes rather than in organized cults. Despite his constant lust, most stories portray him as sexually frustrated. Bless him. Maybe, maybe not.
There you go.
However, in agricultural areas, he was still regarded as the god of fertility. And at one point, he was considered a protective god who threatened sexual violence against anyone, male or female, who transgressed the boundaries that he guarded. And then the next one is a Celtic one, Shilan Gig. Although Shilan Gig is technically the name applied to the carvings of women with exaggerated vulva that have been found in Ireland and England, there's a theory that the carvings are representative of a lost pre-Christian goddess. Typically, the Shilan Gig adorned buildings in areas of Ireland that were part of the Anglo-Norman conquest in the 12th century. She's shown as a homely woman with a giant yoni, which she spread wide to accept the seed of the male. Folkloric evidence indicates that the figures were part of a fertility rite similar to birthing stones, which were used to bring on conception. It's nice to hear that there's female equivalents as well, isn't there? As well
Absolutely,
as the, you know, as well as the gods. And then this one, I have no idea how to pronounce it. So this is Aztec. Coxoquetzal.
Oh,
This
fertility.
There we go. Thank you, Jack. This fertility goddess was associated with spring and represented not only flowers, but the fruit of life and abundance. She was also the patron goddess of prostitutes and craftsmen. Venus, the Roman equivalent of Aphrodite, Venus was the goddess of love, sex, and beauty. Originally, she was believed to be associated with gardens and fruitfulness, but later took on the aspects of Aphrodite from the Greek traditions. She is considered by many to be the ancestor of the Roman people and was the lover of the god Vulcan, as well as of the warrior god Mars. The earliest known temple to Venus was dedicated on the Aventine Hill in Rome around 295. However, her cult was based in the city of Lavinium, and her temple there became the home of a festival known as Vinalia. A later temple was dedicated after the defeat of the Roman army near Lake Tranzime during the Second Punic War. The green man represents the life that grows on earth. They cannot exist without each other. When the horned god, the winter aspect of the green man, sees that May Queen in her maiden form, he realizes that to be with the woman he loves he will need to undergo a huge change. As they process together around the hill, he prepares to surrender his life to her. She then gives him life energy, brings him back in his new form as the Green Man, so they can be together. And then I did say this to Jack earlier, that I usually go to the Green Man Festival in Clun, but I chose to go for lunch with my lovely friend that I haven't seen for ages today.
Which Green Man Festival?
In Clun, C-L-U-N. So just going into Wales, isn't it?
Okay, yeah.
It's in the heart of the Shropshire Hills. The Green Man and Frosty, the Snow Queen battle over the coming of spring to Clun. A colourful family festival with market stalls, refreshments and entertainment in the square and on the castle grounds. And what I love taking my children there, because the Green Man is on stilts and the May Queen is on stilts, and they have this lovely battle on the bridge, and they have fire jugglers, and they have people doing fire breathing, they have dragons there, they have fairies there, they have all sorts of weird and wonderful old-fashioned games like, you know, the top and hoop and things like that. And yeah, just a thoroughly great celebration for all the family, really. And it's good that it's so popular, Jack, because we don't, you know, as we said earlier, we don't want this to be a past tense. This is a living tradition, basically.
Absolutely, we've got to keep it alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lovely way of raising our vibrations, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and living
really
in joy.
Yeah, it's just really good for us, isn't it? And anything that's going to put a smile on our faces and help us to feel more joyful has got to be good for us, really, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's good for us and good for the whole planet.
Yeah, indeed.
It's a shame.
That's all I've got for you tonight, babes.
Dave?
Babes.
Babe. Oh, you called me Dave.
Oh, no, my memory's not quite that bad, Jack.
So I've got
the lady today who says babes all the time. As
I've got another friend who keeps calling.
I've passed it on to babes.
I've got another friend who keeps calling me Patrick, and I can't figure out why. Patrick. She keeps calling me Patrick.
Did to make you laugh?
I don't know.
It might be, mightn't it? Because it's way off, Jack, isn't it? Really.
Right, well, thank you very much, Danny.
Jack, is it?
All that wonderful information.
My pleasure, darling. I love doing these radio shows with you, Jack. I really do.
Yeah, I love having you on too. Anything else you want to say, Andrew?
I was just wondering about, you know, obviously Beltane being where fertility is mentioned, because there is problems with human fertility for many people right now, and whether there was a connection between the way that the Christian traditions of, like, you know, they've not really wanted this kind of conversation that we've been having tonight about phalluses and vulvas and yonis, and they don't want to talk about it. No. You know, they don't mind talking about when you die and what happens, and you putting fear in to your head. But
happy to talk about fear and death, but not life and joy.
It doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, it doesn't.
He's supposed to be, Jesus is supposed to be the Lord of life.
Exactly. And the sun god and the
and everything, and so that it just crossed my mind as you were talking about it, that is this one of the reasons why there is a problem with human fertility? Because people don't talk around this. You know, it is something to be celebrated, human and other fertility. You know, the fact that we have springtime and harvest. I was thinking about a little song that we used to sing in school. It's at Maytime, God has given us Maytime, thank him for his gifts of love and sing a song of spring. It's a really diddy little thing. Never sang it in church, only in school.
Wow.
Yeah, and it just, why aren't we thankful
I know.
for spring? Why isn't it a big song and dance?
Yeah.
Why isn't there a festival going off for that? When we celebrate Easter, which, okay, it's new life, but it's very much, certainly within the Catholic side of the church, about somebody hanging on the tree. I mean, it's frightening if you were a little child and you go in and you see that.
Oh my God, it's awful, isn't it?
So, it's the worst torture that's ever been devised by man. The most torturous way for a human being to die, through asphyxiation, usually takes about 3-4 days.
3 days to it,
they broke Jesus's legs, but he'd already gone, because he actually commended his spirit to the Father before. But anyway, regardless of any of that, isn't it sad that we don't have? I mean, I don't know if you see my Facebook today. I've put a picture of me on my little trike, and I've got a haystack on the back. I'm about 5 or 6, and it says Little Boy Blue. And I've got a horn around my neck, and then I've put a picture on Facebook as my profile, as my sort of top of my page of the maypole. I don't know if we still do that. I don't go to school these days. But I love children. I used to go to school with them, but I don't go to school. I don't think they do it. I don't think they're dancing around the maypole.
No.
And I just find it so sad that there's all this beautiful information that you share, not just about this matter, Beltane, but people aren't made aware of this. It's just so sad.
It's taboo almost, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah, and it's humdrum and TikTok and soulless existence. It's that quote, isn't it, where he says most people live a life of come on, Jack, what am I thinking
quiet
of?
Desperation.
Quiet desperation. Yeah. Why don't we celebrate more, especially springtime?
I know.
Anyway, it just it's always, when I always big this show up, but always when I come, it's like a different world. It's like stepping into a technical world from black and white. It's beautiful. And especially, especially when Annie's using all her verbiage, she oh, that's wonderful, and you actually feel the joy. I do, raising up inside you, and it's such a beautiful world that you both live in, and I'm so pleased I found you.
Annie has brought so much joy to this show.
Thank you. You lovely, lovely people. Thank you.
Absolutely. You've really raised the vibrations of this show since you've been
because I'm naughty.
Yes,
All those years when I was criticised at school for being naughty, I didn't kind of realise that would be one of my superpowers as I became older. And just backtracking a bit to what Andrew was saying, I was brought up as a Catholic, and my grandparents used to sing all things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small. In church, we sang dirges, like Andrew's just said, dirges about being broken on the cross and all this. It was horrific. Why aren't we singing happy songs, celebration songs about, about loving this beautiful earth that we're on? It doesn't make any sense, does it?
I'm thinking about another song that we used to sing in school, not in church. Glad that I live am I, the sky is blue. Glad for the country lanes and the fall of dew. After the sun, the rain. After the rain, the sun. This is the way of life till the work be done.
Why are we singing that?
All that we need to
Oh, sorry.
do, be we low or high, is to see that we grow nearer the sky. It's so full of joy, isn't it?
That's beautiful.
I love it, love it.
Yeah. We need more joy in our lives.
Oh, we so do.
More fun.
Yeah. More naughtiness. Everybody should have their own naughty fairy.
Wave
Make
your
life
book.
so much more interesting.
All you need is love.
La 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 la. Come on then. That's
All
it.
you
You're showing
need is love.
love.
Love is all you
Is all
need.
you need.
Grab a copy of Andrew's book. I'll put the link below in the
I
description.
thoroughly recommend it. And Jack's book.
And Andy's books.
Yeah, our books are scrumptious.
But we're not just here trying to sell books, honest.
We're our own little online bookshop.
Right, I suppose we better wrap it up. It's nearly 10 to 8. Thank you
gorgeous.
both very much for coming. And anybody who's watching on YouTube, please do like, share and subscribe.
Yeah,
It helps us get out
please
to more
do. That'd be
people.
scrumptious.
We really appreciate that. Do it now before you forget. Okay, until
Okay.
next week.
I
See
will
you.
be with you next week, but namaste.
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 Bye. Bye.